All right. Hello, everyone. Just going to make sure everybody can hear me. Yeah, if you can't hear me, let me know in the chat. Or if you can hear me, perhaps that would be better. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. Perfect. Thanks, Jack. Okay. Well, we certainly didn't get as much snow as I think some of us were expecting, but we nonetheless got quite a lot. So I'm glad that I've made the decision to go online with this, just because I can imagine, even with the snowfall having ceased, the commute would be quite a pain. So, let's see, how are we doing for numbers? 30 people. That's fine. This will be recorded and shared to my YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch it later. If you want to sort of refresh yourself on any of the instructions or on any of the tips or tricks that I've given. And of course, for those that are not watching this live, I suppose they'll have the opportunity to watch it later. So, with that said, let's get underway. So, the proposal, which is worth 14% of your final grade, will be due on March 14th. Now, in one of my course outlines, I actually cannot remember uh, if it was this one or the one for moral psychology. I get those mixed up a bit because they both take place around the same time, and a lot of the assignment details are quite similar. In any case, it might have said the 13th in our course outline. It will be the 14th at 11:59 p.m. Your topic proposal is you should aim for 3 to 500 words. And you must, I cannot stress this enough, you must use the template that I have provided on Brightspace. If you go to the helpful materials module, you will find a template in Microsoft Word format. You need to download that template and use that template. This is one of the ways that I make sure that the work is being done by real students and not AI. So failure to use the template results in an automatic zero on the proposal. So you have to use it. You can fill in your student information, like it'll have the course information, the due date, etc. That's all going to be there. But you're going to want to put your student information in. So make sure your name is there. You can put your student number if you want to, but that's not really necessary. Um, Give your proposal a nice title and clearly state what your proposal is going to be about. Uh, I'll break this down in a moment, but basically, you're going to have a title, an area of interest, a research question, or a thesis statement, and then a plan of attack, as I call it. That's what you're going to be doing here. You're going to also want to make sure you include a bibliography or references section. So we'll call it a bibliography for the proposal, where the proposal is concerned, because a bibliography contains all the sources you've looked at, not just what you cite. A references section contains only what you cite. So put whatever sources you were thinking of using in that bibliography. Yeah, I encourage APA format. I'll say a little bit about this momentarily, but um, you can use whatever style you want. But I think APA is easier to work with. Um, so I encourage the use of APA, but if you use like MLA or something, I'm not going to dock marks for that. The important thing is to just be consistent in terms of whatever style you use, stick with it. Don't switch and don't mix up elements of different citation styles, right? So, and this on slide here 3, this is all given in the template, right? It has your information that you can fill in at the top. Make sure you delete the instructions. Sometimes I get um, proposals where the instructions are still there, kind of underneath these little placeholder things. You can delete those, okay? You don't have to leave them in. Delete them and write in your own area of interest. So in a few sentences, up to a couple of paragraphs, the more detail, the better, honestly. Um, you can tell me your area of interest in a sentence or two, like, I'm going to be writing about the ethics of AI. Okay, cool, right? That doesn't really tell me a whole lot. You need to say enough to identify what particular area of the ethics AI you are interested in working on. So maybe you're interested in autonomous weapon systems, right? You might say a few words about that. Like, I'm interested in the ethics of employing lethal autonomous weapon systems in warfare, or I'm interested in discussing how the existential threats of AI are overblown, right? But say a bit more, like what particular kinds of existential threats? Are there particular autonomous weapon systems that you're going to be looking at? If you choose that topic, if you choose something to do with our relationship to robots, like social robotics or companion robots, etc., then tell me a little bit about that and start broad and then narrow down. But, one or two sentences might be okay, but you want to do better than okay, right? So I'd suggest maybe up to a paragraph for that area of interest section. Then you'll need to tell me either what your thesis statement is going to be, or identify a research question and give me your preliminary answer to that question. And a thesis statement, just so that we're clear about what I mean, is a statement, one or two sentences, usually one, but maybe two, that tells the reader what particular claim that you are going to try to convince them of in the course of your paper. That has to be there in the proposal and in the final paper. You need a thesis statement. You can frame it in terms of a research question, though, if you want to. So you ask and then answer a question. And the answer to that question is essentially your thesis. So you could have a research question that maybe goes something like, uh, let's see, is it ethical? Um, would it be ethical to allow um, full self-driving mode in like self-driving vehicles, right? That's a question. In this paper, I will argue that it is not ethical to allow vehicles to operate in this way. And then your paper is about convincing me why that is the case. Um, so you need the question, but you also need the answer. And importantly, you need to tell me the answer right away. You can't just have a couple of questions in the introduction and then kind of launch into a discussion. Tell the reader how you will answer the question, and that serves as a thesis statement, right? Then, last thing for the proposal, other than the references and bibliography, will be a plan of attack where you want to give me a sketch of how you intend your paper to unfold, right? And I'll tell you more about what I would like to see in the plan of attack, but you'll probably tell me a little bit about some important concepts that you might be using, some other thinkers that you'll be drawing on. Make mention of some sources that you think will be helpful and how you will use them. I don't want to see things like, I plan to go to the Carleton University library and find sources. You need to have identified some preliminary sources. And a good way to do that would be to use our readings as a starting point. And then, uh, since our the chapters in our textbook make reference to many, many, many other sources, you have a sort of gateway into lots of different sources that you could go and check out. Um, so, yeah, a little bit about how you will use the ideas and the evidence that you plan to use. That's what you want to tell me. You want to tell me like what kind of argument are you going to make? Um, there are different kinds of ways you could go about approaching arguing for something that I'll say more about momentarily. So, give me a sketch of your final paper, right? So, as far as the important details for the essay assignment go, remember that this is a final take-home exam. So, you have until the very end of the final exam period, that is April 26th at 11:59 p.m., to complete your essay. And I've decided to make them a little shorter than it specifies in the course outline. That is because it's a big class, right? So the essays should be about 1,500 words in length, excluding bibliography, references, title page, that kind of stuff. So the body of your paper needs to be at least 1,500 words in length. You can write a little bit more than that if you want to, but make sure that you're not repeating yourself. You don't want repetition in an essay. You want to, um, say something once and then don't say it again. You can remind the reader of what you've said previously, but don't like restate it unnecessarily. So try and look out for repetition. Um, so yeah, you can write a little bit more than 1,500 words. Do not write less than 1,500 words. That'll be important. How much more would be acceptable? I would say I wouldn't encourage pushing it very much past 2,000 words. Um, because part of the challenge here is to say what you need to say within the space that you're allowed to say it. So, right, if the essay is supposed to be 1,500 words and you write something that's like 3,000 words long, uh, that's not going to work in your favor, right? Yeah. Yeah, Jack, that's right. Like this will help you zero. Like if there's a topic you could write an entire thesis about and a topic you can write a 1,500 to 2,000 word paper about, write that one and save the other thing for like a longer project, right? Um, Now this essay is worth quite a bit, right? It's worth 40% coupled with the 15% that your proposal is worth. Um, Late proposals and late essays will be penalized 10% per day unless there are extenuating circumstances. Now, those of you who have had a class with me before know that I tend to be very accommodating. Um, right? I understand that things happen, okay? People get sick, people have personal emergencies, people's computers break. Um, any number of things can happen. And I get it. Life happens. All I ask is that if something does happen, you reach out and you let me know as soon as possible. If you're sick, and you cannot finish you were waiting to put the finishing touches on your proposal or your paper, and then you get the flu or something and you just can't get out of bed. Well, let me know and then get me a medical self-declaration form and I will not apply this penalty, right? Let's see what's in the chat here. That's right. Yeah, I'm recording the meeting and I'm going to put it up on my YouTube channel and I'll have a link on Brightspace to that video. So whatever you missed, you can go and look at it later. You can even watch this twice if you need to and make sure that you've got all of the important details. Um, so I just ask that you contact me if you need to, if something arises. Because sometimes it happens that I don't hear from people, and then the paper is just late with no letting me know what's going on. Um, those papers will receive a penalty, and those proposals will receive this penalty. So as soon as you know that you might not be able to meet the deadline, you should let me know. And it's almost guaranteed that I'm going to try and work with you um, if you communicate with me. But if you don't, and your stuff is late, even if you contact me after, right? Contact me when you know. I won't be mad about it, right? I know some people are maybe nervous about approaching professors, right? Like, oh, I'm not sure if I can ask my professor for an extension because of whatever issue I'm having. You can. Don't be nervous. I probably won't say no, right? Um, just communicate with me. You must also, when it comes to the final paper, submit proof of student work. You need to submit a number of drafts to show me that you wrote that paper. So, you've got to submit the proposal using the template. You don't need proof of student work for the proposal. Although I would say that if anyone is thinking of using generative AI to put together a proposal, that's probably a bad idea because I'm pretty good at catching it. Um, but when it comes to the final paper, you're going to want to send me like a couple of early drafts. I would say three three drafts, maybe a beginning, a middle, an almost final, and then the final draft, which will be marked. And you can save them on your computer. You know, create a little folder. Philosophy of AI paper drafts, and just if you're working on it 1 week, then at the end of the week, save that. That's my really really rough draft. Then the next week, you work on it some more. At the end of the week, save that. That's your less rough draft, and so on until you get to the final draft. And you can submit all of these on the Dropbox, in the Dropbox on Brightspace. There will be no need to zip them and put them in a little file folder, a little zip file. No need to do that. We'll allow for multiple file submissions. So just make sure you submit all your proof of student work when you are handing in your paper. Failure to do so, automatic zero. No, submit everything all together. Um, but like let's say you get your feedback on your proposal, right? Take that proposal, work in the feedback, turn it into the start of your first draft, and then maybe at the end of that week, save that. That's your first draft. And then continue to do that. So give me a couple of drafts. Um, uh, yeah, you probably shouldn't write the whole thing in one sitting. Um, But if you do, yeah, you need to save multiple drafts. Like it needs to be clear that you wrote the paper, right? And I know that probably most, if not all of you, will actually write the paper, right? It's just that generative AI has really thrown a wrench into using the idea of using essays this way. So much so that actually not a lot of professors, I believe I mentioned this during the first week, but not a lot of professors are assigning essays anymore. I am because I believe learning to write is very important. Um, just make sure that in your proof of student work, it is clear that you have done the work. Yes. Can you submit a proposal on a topic that we have not covered in class but is related to ethics of AI? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say more about that as we continue on with these instructions. All right, so when it comes to the proposal, use the template. That's all you need to know in terms of format. Use the template. But when it comes to the essay, I would like to see things double spaced and typed, obviously. Use 11 or 12 point font or whatever the defaults are. Make sure your margins aren't all weird. The MS Word defaults should be fine. And you must submit your essay and your proof of student work in Doc, DocX, or PDF. I do not accept other file formats. If you don't use Word, no problem. Save it as a PDF. Save your drafts as PDFs, right? That's fine. And by the way, all of you can access Microsoft Office for free. Um, well, it's not technically for free. It comes out of your tuition. But if you download the Microsoft Office, I believe it's the 360 suite, you can download that. And if you log into that with your Carleton credentials, so the same stuff you use to log into your email to Brightspace and all of that. If you log in with that, then you have Microsoft Office and you can just use it. Um, and some of you may have a preference for a different word processor. That's fine. But just make sure that you're submitting in a file format that I accept. And make sure, of course, that you include a references or bibliography section. That's very important for avoiding plagiarism. Make sure that you cite all of your work properly. Here's what you need to do to avoid plagiarism. Number one, you cannot use generative AI to write your paper. And I don't recommend it for editing your paper either. As I've said previously in this class, there are humans who can help you with this at Writing Services, which I believe is located in the library. Yeah, the drafts, yeah, everything needs to be in Doc, DocX, or PDF. Yeah. I will not accept other file formats. I just won't. Your stuff won't get marked. Um, so, yes, no generative AI to write the paper, and I don't recommend using it to edit your paper. Um, there are humans who can help you with that. This other stuff is fairly, like it's copy pasted, ironically, just from the course outline, which is also kind of copy pasted from the same sort of guide that we all use. But basically, what plagiarism amounts to is taking someone else's words or ideas and presenting them as your own. So you want to make sure that if you're not certain, right, if you're not certain, do I need to cite something? Just cite it. Just cite it anyway. Oh, okay. Thanks, Sam. Yeah. So they're very helpful. Yeah, and they're going to be able to like chat. Here's the thing, right? If you want to use Grammarly or ChatGPT or something to edit, um, it'll just kind of recommend changes you should make. A human can explain why you need to be making the changes, right? That's why it's better to get help from a human being. And writing services is an option. Perhaps some of you, if you're getting to know one another in class, then you might like to swap drafts via email or Discord or something, and you can read and edit each other's drafts. That's fine too, right? Because one thing I think that assignments like this maybe don't really prepare you for is the collaborative nature of work. Right? If you go to graduate school, you're going to be working together collaboratively with other professors, like as a teaching assistant, as a student working on a thesis or a major research project. If you go into the workforce, you're going to be collaborating with others, right? So I think it's fine if you want to have a classmate read your draft and make suggestions, and you read theirs and make suggestions for them. I think that's fine. I think that's actually a good thing. Um, and you can help one another make sure you're citing everything correctly. So you want to make sure that if you're using paraphrasing or direct quotations, we need a proper in-text citation with author's name, year of publication, page number. Um, if you're mentioning or referring to a work, you need the author's name and the year of publication, and you need full bibliographic information in whatever kind of references section you decide to use. Um, so yeah, when in doubt, cite. I do recommend APA, as I mentioned earlier. You can use a different one, just don't mix different elements of different citation styles up. Yeah, yeah, it can, and I'll say more about possible topics as we get to the end of this. This is a very helpful resource, Purdue University's online writing lab, or OWL. It's a very good resource. It has all of the citation style guides, and you should read those guides. So if you decide to use APA, read the style guide. Don't just use their citation generator. Because, it's not just about getting citations right, it's about knowing when you need them. So if I introduce a thinker, if I refer to, Jones 2008, and I quote some particular passage, then I also need a page number. And then if I keep writing more about this work, I don't need to cite the author and the year of publication again, unless I then introduce a new source. So I cite Jones 2008, and then it's just assumed that if there's page numbers in there, they're referring to whatever's in Jones 2008 until I cite, Jeffries 1997. Then the next time I cite Jones, I need full bibliographic in-text citation again, right? These are the kinds of things you learn about when you read the style guide. Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah. Yeah, so there we go. Already people are thinking about swapping drafts. I think that's good. And it's a very good it's a good idea, it's good practice. It's good. It benefits everyone. Uh you should do it. Oh, excuse me. So what kinds of papers can you write? Well, um one kind of paper would be a survey paper, where you simply outline a particular area. But of course, you won't be writing a survey paper, you're writing a research paper. So you need to present an argument or answer a research question, and you need to gather evidence and use that evidence in your argument to answer your question or to convince the reader of your thesis. So the paper will involve some surveying, but it's not just a survey paper. It actually must contain, some claim that you're trying to convince the reader of, right? So no survey papers, but there will be some surveying, right? You could try and style your argument positively. That's when you argue for a particular position. Likewise, you might instead choose to argue against a particular position. So that would be a negative argument. Or you can write an adjudicative paper where you try and decide between two different positions. Maybe there are two answers to a research question that you've posed, and you want to try and convince the reader that one of those answers is better than the other, right? So again, maybe you want to write about the ethics of lethal autonomous weapon systems. Perhaps you want to talk about the idea of an ethical governor versus the prospect that it just might never be ethical to introduce these devices into combat. So you'd be adjudicating between those two answers to your research question and trying to convince the reader which one is the correct one. It doesn't just have to be two different positions, but I suggest trying to keep it simple. Uh, you know, two positions is fine if you opt for the adjudicative paper. Some of you may, of course, remember the five paragraph essay, right? It's got an intro paragraph, three body paragraphs, and a concluding paragraph. I think it's very important to let you all know that what this is meant to be is merely a teaching tool. So I don't want to see any five paragraph essays. Your essay should have as many paragraphs as necessary. You will need an introductory paragraph and a concluding paragraph. Ugh. But don't limit yourself to three body paragraphs. You can use as many as you need to. And remember that each paragraph uh, has like a job to do, right? Each paragraph is like a step in your argument. So The introductory paragraph, as the name suggests, introduces the topic, gives the reader your thesis, all of that important stuff. The next two paragraphs might be dedicated to literature review. So maybe you survey some important ideas, and maybe you have one important idea per paragraph, right? The other paragraphs might explain premises in your argument or how you're using certain evidence to support your claims, right? But the basic idea is that each paragraph is like a step or a stage in getting toward the end of your paper, in convincing the reader of your argument. So paragraphs should be really kind of designed around single topics. We don't want to see and I have seen this before. I don't want to see paragraphs that are like 1 or 2 pages long. That's too long, right? So as I've said, the purpose of an assignment like this is to present an argument and convince the reader of it, or to ask and answer a research question and convince the reader that your answer is the correct one, right? So that's what your thesis is. It's what you're trying to convince the reader of. It can be in a self-contained thesis statement, in this paper, I will argue that, and then your thesis, or you can do the research question approach. But if you do that, just remember you must have the answer ready right away, right? Um, maybe your research question is, would a sentient machine be worthy of moral consideration? In this paper, I will attempt to convince the reader that yes, sentient machines would be worthy of moral consideration. So that answer to your research question is your thesis statement, and you need to give it right away. Don't wait until the end of the paper. And this is the one of the benefits of doing the proposal, right? After you get your feedback returned to you for the proposals, you can take that feedback, apply it to the proposal, and turn that proposal into the start of your paper, the first paragraph or two. So if you write 500 words for your proposal, it's kind of like you've already written 500 words for your paper. You'll just have some editing, some moving around, and some shuffling of words and things to do. You'll want to make it sound more like an essay and less like a proposal as you're doing this. Sometimes people will just copy and paste bits of their proposal, and the tone changes, and it's kind of like jarring, right? Your proposal, um, reads like, I intend to write a paper about this, and that's not what your paper should sound like. Your paper should say, this paper is concerned with, whatever it is you're writing about. Um, so yeah, that's just one of the benefits of doing the proposals, I think. So how should you go about building an argument? Well, remember, you've got your thesis or you've got your research question and answer. Your argument is how you convince somebody else that you're right. You use evidence and you use sound reasoning to do this. So in philosophy, this is how we think of arguments. Arguments are not just fights you have with your friends or on the internet or something, right? Rather, we have premises and conclusions. And if the conclusion, or rather, if the premises are all true and the structure of the argument is valid, then your conclusions are going to be true. That's the beauty of arguing properly. So, how do you make sure that your argument is valid? You need to watch out for errors of reasoning, logical fallacies. So you're going to want to watch out for things like, straw man fallacy, begging the question, uh, argument ad populum, any number of things. We can go through a list of examples if you want to. But you want to make sure that on the one hand, you are not making any errors of reasoning, and you want to make sure that all your premises are true. That's how you make sure your argument is sound, right? So you want your argument to be valid, no errors of reasoning, but you also want it to be sound, no false premises, right? So that means you have to really show me that you understand what the evidence you are using means. Um, and that's one of the things that a paper in the A range will do. It will show me that you have an excellent grasp of what the evidence you're drawing on actually says, right? Try and be clear, concise, not too wordy. Don't be straightforward, or do be straightforward, right? And remember, if you go with a research question, you're still arguing. You're still trying to convince the reader that your answer is the right answer, right? So here's how I would suggest doing that. Once you get your feedback for your proposal, you're going to rewrite your proposal, turn it into the introduction. So introduce your topic, your a little bit of background, um, give me your thesis statement or your research question. Tell me a bit about how your essay will proceed. Like, give me a bit about your plan of attack. And so that's one or two paragraphs right there. That's 500 or so words right there. That's a third of your paper done. Then the body is where the actual argument happens. And remember, each paragraph is a stage or a step in your argument. Maybe it explains a bit of evidence, an important concept, a premise in your argument, but it's got a job to do, right? Then in your conclusion, you summarize everything, restate the thesis, and conclude. And you want your thesis statement or your research question and answer in the introduction to really, grab the reader's attention. You want your introduction to be kind of like a catchy song. And what I mean by that is that you need a hook to really grab the reader's attention. And then your conclusion should be like a hammer blow or something that just boom, there, I've argued this. I've convinced you, right? That's what you want. I always recommend that people try and use plain and simple language. Don't try and make yourself sound smart uh, by using overly complicated language. I don't like verbosity. If there's a fancy highfalutin word that you want to use because it works and that's the right way to use the word, that's fine. But don't make things wordier than they need to be. Make sure you're using uh, technical terms correctly, especially because this is a philosophy class. So, in philosophy, things like words like concept, these are technical terms. So you have to make sure you're using them properly. It doesn't mean the same thing that it means in everyday speech. So you want to make sure that you're using technical terms um, that are, use them in a way that's technically correct, um, not necessarily in a way that reflects our everyday vernacular. To make sure that you are doing this properly, I recommend you use a thesaurus and a dictionary. But you have to use them properly. What do I mean by that? Thesauruses, dictionaries, and encyclopedias are not scholarly sources. So a lot of people will make an error like this where they cite a dictionary definition of a word in a paper. That's not what the dictionary is for, right? Unless you're using the Oxford English Dictionary to explain the genealogy of a certain term or something, you don't cite dictionaries. You use dictionaries as guides, not as sources. So your dictionary and your thesaurus are there to make sure that you are using the right words. You're not to use them as sources because they're not scholarly sources. They're guides. Likewise with encyclopedias, I will allow the use of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy because that's written by philosophers, um, and it's maintained by a university. But other encyclopedias are not like this. Encyclopedias are created and sold by companies. They're not maintained by universities. You know, it used to be that back in the day, you would get a set of encyclopedias because a salesperson would come to your door and sell them to you, right? Um, they are products. They are not scholarly sources. Um, Definitely do not cite Wikipedia. Wikipedia is great. I love Wikipedia, but you can't cite it because anybody can just edit it, and you don't know who's editing it. So what you can do is identify scholarly sources in the like in the references on the Wikipedia pages. You could perhaps use those sources if they turn out to be scholarly sources, but you can't use the Wikipedia page itself, right? So yeah, your sources have to be scholarly sources. A lot of people also ask me about the kind of language they can use, and I'm pretty flexible about that. You can, of course, use the first person I. So, in this paper, I will argue, et cetera, et cetera. You can be third person. So, this essay will argue, et cetera, et cetera. I even let people use the royal we, because some people feel fancy when they do that, including me, right? In this paper, we will argue that, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine too. Um, there are certain things you want to watch out for, like incorrect semicolon use. A lot of people don't use these properly, and I generally recommend not using them. Same with if you are going to use them, just make sure you're using them correctly. Same with M dashes. Um, Make sure you're using them properly. For that matter, make sure you're using regular colons properly. And watch out for the grammar, watch out for your spelling. Make sure your punctuation is on point. I don't want to see comma splices and sentence fragments or run on sentences, problems with parallelism or words that are misspelled. Um, I mean, the grammar checker in Microsoft Word is sufficient, I think, for an assignment like this. I know some students have mentioned that they use Grammarly, but there's really no need to. Um, Microsoft Word's spelling and grammar check are good enough. And if you combine that with some help from a human being, like a classmate or somebody in writing services, you should be able to avoid uh, errors like this. Hmm. Sorry, everyone. I was just momentarily distracted by a scraping sound. I guess somebody's trying to shovel themselves out. So, a few more do's and don'ts. Um, Always assume your reader is intelligent but doesn't know about the topic you're writing about. So, even though, like, if I'm the reader or Alex is the reader, we've read the textbook, we know what we need to know, but don't assume that we know. Explain terms to the reader as if they don't know, because that shows us that you know, right? Make sure you explain clearly as opposed to oversimplifying. I also like to see inclusive language. So I don't want to see like mankind, right? I want to see humanity, right? Make sure you use your technical terms correctly. Anything else? Anything else we might want to watch out for in terms of our writing? Oh, using illustrative examples is always very helpful, right? Because that helps the reader understand, and it also helps us understand whether you understand what you're writing about, which is very important. Some don'ts, watch out for straw man fallacy and other common logical fallacies. Don't use those big stupid statements like since the beginning of time to start your paper, because that's always wrong, right? Since the beginning of time, man has wondered about artificial intelligence. No, we haven't. So don't do that, right? Watch out for your levels of verbosity, your phraseology. Use those technical terms properly. Yeah. Any questions? I think we're nearly through this. We will be brainstorming some topics, so uh yeah, we're almost at the end. So maybe I'll carry on. You don't have to write like a perfect bulletproof paper that changes the world or anything, right? Yeah, but I want to see a convincing argument. I want to see you use the evidence you've gathered, the knowledge you've acquired in this class, the critical thinking skills you've developed in this class. I want to see you use all of that to convince the reader that what you say is correct. A big part of writing an essay that's easy to read, by the way, is to make sure that it flows. So, one way that I like to do this is to read a paper out loud. Um, this helps you hear it, if that makes sense. Like, you'll not only catch errors, like, if you're just staring at a screen looking for typos, etc., you will miss a lot. You'll be surprised. But if you print it out and read it out loud to yourself, you will catch errors you didn't even know you were making. Um, you can also, of course, have a friend read your paper and then you read theirs, right? That's fine. I used to say that maybe you can go and check out examples online of really good papers, but oh, excuse me, but you have to be careful because I mean, who uploaded the paper, right? And writing services is always there. But make sure there's a flow to it. Make sure the language flows. Make sure that one paragraph leads naturally to the next and to the next and to the next. Um, you don't want things to be all disjointed and suddenly change topics all of a sudden. This goes for when you integrate quotations as well. Some people, when they're integrating quotations, just jam them in there with no context or contextualization. You have to introduce quotations. You can't just stick a quote in there. You have to be like, as so and so has written, do quotation, right? You can't just cram them in. When it comes to the sources, once again, use your readings as a starting point. Um, but you do need to use scholarly sources. I recommend at least five, and that could include a textbook chapter, um, other textbook chapters, other books, academic papers, journal articles. Right, journalistic sources are good, right? Especially with AI. There's a lot of developments happening in terms of like international like AI summits, right? The prime minister was just in France at an AI summit, along with other representatives from other nations. And those are being reported on by the press. So you can use those. Things that I would stay away from are like podcasts, YouTube videos, anything like that. Sometimes I see sources that look scholarly, but that are not. Some people cite Crash Course and like Khan Academy or Psych2Go. These are not scholarly sources. You need to cite scholarly sources. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying you can't learn anything from them, but they're just not the kind of source you ought to be using in an assignment like this. Like I said, avoid Wikipedia, avoid encyclopedias and dictionaries as sources, with the exception of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. All right. How will I be evaluating your paper? Yeah, Jim, that's a good question. So, you can cite those just as lectures or panels, and there's a way to do that, right? The APA guide specifies how you cite a lecture. So you're not actually citing a YouTube video, you're just citing a lecture that happens to be on YouTube, right? And that's fine, right? So if you want to cite like I don't know, oh, this was a long time ago, but there was a debate about strong AI between like Ray Kurzweil and John Searle, and that's probably on YouTube, and you'd cite it as that's fine. Um, yeah, Sam, another thing, yeah, like if it's peer reviewed, like books from academic publishers and academic journals go through a kind of review process, right? Um, so yeah, stick with scholarly and or journalistic stuff. That is what you want to be doing. Um, so how will I evaluate your paper? Well, this is roughly how I do things. A paper in the A range will have a very good thesis. Original, well articulated, thoughtful. The research will be excellent. The argument will be very, very good, very excellent. The writing itself will be very nearly free of any errors. Um, Not only will you be identifying really great sources of evidence and using them in a really good argument, your argument will also show me that you understand those sources or that you understand the issues at play. So a paper in the A range is very, very good. Excellent. It's very excellent. Um, an A is hard to get, right? It's got to be a really good paper to fall in the A range. A paper in the B range will be somewhat like a paper in the A range, but could have been a little better, right? So you have a good thesis. Your research will be good, but maybe you could have included a few more sources, or maybe your argument will be pretty good, but there's room for improvement in terms of, maybe you haven't made any serious errors, but maybe like a paper in the A range anticipates a counter argument and replies to it, and a paper in the B range doesn't. Maybe you're not fully utilizing the sources that you've gathered, the evidence that you've gathered. Maybe there's a few mistakes in the writing, but not severe enough to impact the clarity of your paper. That's what a paper in the B range looks like. And the B range is good, It's good. It's not excellent, but it's not bad. So B is fine, right? A paper in the C range, you're going to start seeing problems like maybe a poorly articulated thesis or research question, or maybe none at all. Very poor argument. So I'm seeing mistakes. I'm seeing fallacies. Maybe I'm seeing a lot of problems with spelling and grammar, sentence structure. The sources start to look less academic and more, completely non-academic. So you're citing like YouTube videos and Wikipedia and stuff. Like, no, that's not what we want to do. A paper in the D range. So C is like satisfactory, right? So A excellent, B good, C satisfactory. D is not good. Okay, you're going to have a very badly formulated thesis or maybe no thesis at all. So maybe you pose a research question and then never answer it. And just launch into some discussion about something that doesn't follow from what you've set up in the introduction. That's not good. We don't want that. Maybe a bad argument or perhaps no argument. Um, Problems with spelling, grammar, sentence structure, etc. Bad sources or no sources as no sources no blah, no sources at all. I had the example I always give for a bad paper is a few years ago I was teaching a philosophy of technology class, and a student that was otherwise very good, very interested in technocracy. And they wrote their final paper on technocracy and the pandemic, which might have been a good thing to talk about, but not the way this student did it. This student basically repeated internet conspiracy talking points and gestured toward Facebook memes, like anti-government Facebook memes, basically stuff that people in the so-called Freedom Convoy were circulating on social media. Um, they didn't even cite those memes; they just mentioned them. That is a very bad paper. That gets a D or an F, right? Yeah, not good. Not good. I thought to myself, have I taught you nothing? Right? Um, so failure is going to be if a D or an F, it's got to be pretty bad. I'd say it's probably pretty hard to get a D or even to fail if you really try, right? In this class, it's actually pretty hard to fail the assignment. Um, but it happens. Some people don't finish their assignment, their essay, right? Some people don't put any effort. Some people plagiarize. And if you get caught doing that, I do have to file an academic misconduct report. So it's not up to me what happens to you. But you can fail the assignment, you can fail the class. It goes on your transcript. So you don't want that following you around. So don't plagiarize. If it comes down to Professor, I screwed up and I need another week to finish my paper versus, oh, I'll just have ChatGPT write it tonight. Please talk to me. Like, if it comes down to that, if you're that desperate that you're thinking of using ChatGPT or generative AI to do your paper for you, just ask me for an extension. Explain what's going on. I will give you the time. I don't want you to run the risk of committing plagiarism and getting an academic offense. Like, I don't want that. And also, I don't want to police this. I don't want to be an essay cop. Okay? So don't make me do it. Please. Um, so yeah, if things are that bad, and I get it, like I've been in situations where I've left things and I've panicked and I'm like, I'm not gonna get this done and it's gonna be terrible. And yeah, I've been there. Don't be afraid to reach out if you need help. I'm here to help. I'm here to make sure you succeed. And I would hate for some academic offense to appear on your record. So don't do that. How do you get an A plus? You do everything that you need to do to get a paper in the A range, but you also impress me. Maybe you say something I haven't thought of before, right? Something like that, right? You impress me. Maybe you write a paper, maybe you're a second or third year student, maybe you write a paper that's like grad school level quality. That's probably an A plus. So impress me. Unfortunately, no. I could I'm sure we could all use more money and or scotch, but maybe if you're so what I'm trying to say is don't be frightened, okay? Like I know some professors can be intimidating, and I know some professors are not the most amiable people, right? I know some professors, if you're like, Professor, I can't get this done. My car is broken. My dog is sick, and I've got the flu. Some professors just like, yeah, too bad. You got to get it done. I'm not going to do that. Um, I will work with you, right? So there's no need to butter me up with money or scotch, right? Or whatever else, right? There's no need. There's no need. I will help you. I want to make sure that you succeed. Right. Well, we've got lots of time left. Now, I mentioned one example topic in class. That is doing an analysis of a film, a book, a series, right? Eye in the Sky, when we were talking about lethal autonomous weapon systems. That's a good one. Um, uh, Lots of sci-fi stuff is good, right? There's no shortage of science fiction movies that feature AI as a theme. There are episodes of Star Trek. The Matrix is a good one. Um, Ex Machina, Her, right? I, Robot, the movie AI, right? All of these, if you want to write on a film, would be good candidate films to do a sort of like philosophical analysis. You just have to make sure that there's an argument or a question and an answer, right? Yeah, Ex Machina, Metal Gear Solid 2. I actually haven't played it. Blade Runner, yes. You know, when I was in grad school and it was my second year of my master's degree, and I needed a supervisor. And it was becoming very apparent that the person whose interests overlapped the most with what I was thinking of working on, uh, yeah, well, I've had people in my philosophy of the paranormal class write about Twin Peaks. So if you're going to take that class, perhaps, then there's an opportunity to write on Twin Peaks. Um, But yeah, I ended up working with Professor Heidi Maybaum, who is now at the University of Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, the first bit of homework that she assigned me when it came to writing my thesis, which was about the Uncanny Valley phenomenon, was Blade Runner. So, yeah, Blade Runner, absolutely. Detroit Become Human, yes, that's a good one. So I hear. I'm actually been meaning to play that, right? So I should mention that your analysis could include not just films, books, and TV shows, but video games like, Metal Gear Solid 2 or Detroit Become Human, right? But make sure that there's an actual argument. It can't just be like, so in this game, there are robots, right? You know what I mean? There has to be an argument and you have to actually be analyzing something in the film or whatever piece of media you use, or using that piece of media as an illustrative example to illuminate aspects of your argument, right? But I am pretty friendly, pretty sci-fi friendly. So yeah, if that's something you want to do, that's fine with me. Since I mentioned that an adjudicative paper is yeah, Yennefer, yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, the Geth. Mass Effect's got a lot of one interesting thing. I don't know if you could get a whole paper out of this, but one interesting thing is the way that in the Mass Effect universe they distinguish between virtual intelligence and artificial intelligence. Um, I first heard about that actually from a friend of a colleague. It was a colleague's partner's brother who was just going on about how awesome Mass Effect was, and that finally made so I went and played it, and now it's like my favorite video game ever, especially Mass Effect 2. But yeah, thought he was telling me about this distinction between virtual intelligence and artificial intelligence, and I'm like, well, that's kind of like weak AI versus strong AI, right? So there's something maybe, right? I don't know. Um, Cyberpunk, yep, yep, yep. Johnny Engrams. I don't know this one. Yeah, I don't know that, but uh yeah, so that's one way you could work that in, Yennefer. Kathleen was Johnny's from Cyberpunk. Okay. Kathleen, I was thinking of writing about the whole fake Willy Wonka theme park. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Sorry, the image of that woman dressed as the Oompa Loompa comes to mind. But yeah, Yeah, so okay, so one topic is some pick some film or whatever piece of art and do an analysis on it. Uh you could of course talk about the ethics of AI art. So um there's no shortage of ethical questions that this technology raises. But one thing that we don't really have on the reading list is anything on art. So the ethics of AI art would be great. Um, you can also adjudicate between various positions that we cover. So an argument for or against, or weighing the pros and cons for or against autonomous weapon systems or generative AI, um, or anything like that, right? Um, maybe there's a particular reading that really got you thinking. And that's how you know you should probably write a paper about that idea because it gets the wheels turning and you keep thinking about it, right? You keep coming back to it. You're inspired, as it were. That idea is what you need to write your paper on because then it seems less like work. What are some other ideas that we could go with? I mean, certainly misinformation and disinformation and AI's role in generating and propagating it would be a very pertinent topic. Yeah, there's really no shortage of things, really no shortage of topics. And by the way, the one thing I will allow you to use ChatGPT to do is brainstorm topics. And if you ask ChatGPT, like, hey, ChatGPT, I'm writing a 1,500 word paper for my ethics of AI philosophy class. What are five possible topics? And it gives you five topics, and one of them you like. You can use it, but you need to put a little footnote in your paper that says, I used generative AI to help me come up with this topic. So you need to acknowledge that you used it. It's not a trick, okay? It's not a trick. That's the one thing that I think it might be okay to use it for. Bounce ideas off of and come up with a topic. But you can't use it for writing or editing. That's what is not allowed, okay? AI resume reviewers, yeah. Well, that strikes me as a question of sorry, I'm getting a little overwhelmed by the chat. Automation. So automation has been around for a while, but now we have automation and AI, such that now there are automatic resume reviewers, not just automatic, robots that help people assemble cars and stuff, right? So that would be perhaps something you could explore. Absolutely. Yes, Olivia, I would say the ethical concerns of companion AIs, consent, absolutely. Absolutely, that would be a topic. All of these are like good areas of interests, right? We don't have to come up with, I mean, it's your job to come up with possible thesis statements and research questions, but these are good possible topics or areas of interest that, and I'm glad you guys are all uh, thinking about this so much. So yeah, the ethical concerns of companion AIs, consent would be a great topic. As I mentioned, in Tuesday's class, I had a student, a grad student, Theo, who wrote a really, really cool paper on the problems with uh, like AI girlfriends, who they're marketed to, the behaviors that they sort of encourage, the attitudes toward women, that are kind of baked into the workings of these applications and to the way they're marketed, right? It's all very problematic. So absolutely, that would be a great topic. Yeah, Jack. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself because we'll be talking about this when we get back. but it doesn't sound like it doesn't even sound like behaviorism to me. Like it just sounds confused. Like it sounds to me like okay, we can just we just base our ethical obligations are based off of observable behavior. Oh, and you can infer mental states if you want, I guess. Like we all don't do that on the basis of behavior anyway. Like it's like he wants to be a folk psychologist but be called a behaviorist, right? Um it is confused. Like it is very confused. Um the harms of AI chatbots being used as therapists. Yeah, yeah, yes, yes, yes. That would be great. That would be an excellent topic. So, looking at potential harms associated with that. How can we, and when it comes to potential harms with any of these applications, how can we anticipate them? How can we mitigate them? Should be should be a concern, right? Co-op student Kathleen, the co-op student, did an interview. I do have a bone to pick with AI deciding. Yeah, yeah, this is a good point. Jim is working on the thesis that it is necessary to consider all nested ethical frameworks when considering ethical responsibilities involved in controlling laws. Yeah, that sounds very comprehensive. I assume you mean we can't just build the thing to work on the basis of utilitarianism or deontic ethics. We have to kind of like I think it was Powers and Ganesha who suggested that there would need to be some kind of holistic, integrated approach, in terms of like action languages and stuff. It sounds like what you're working on might be similar to some of that. So yeah, that sounds like a pretty important topic that would be worthy to write on. Algorithmic bias, totally. And in fact, in a little bit, we're going to be looking at algorithmic bias um, when it comes to race and gender. And that chapter is written by Timnit Gebru, and she was actually a working for Google on AI safety until she was fired for bringing some things to the attention of the higher ups. Um, it was kind of like, if Google, I'll say, I can give you a better, more comprehensive account of this when we come back from the break, but she had certain concerns about AI safety that, she wanted implemented. And it was sort of like, well, they should do this. They could fire me if they don't think that they should do this, or I could quit, but Google needs to be doing, these things for in terms of AI safety. And they just kind of said, okay, bye. Right. So, is there a scope that would be considered too large for a paper like this? Like, could I write about how the use of generative AI is fundamentally immoral. No, I don't think so because if you think about it, like any number of the topics that you could pick for a paper like this be you could bring a very wide scope. You could examine them under a very wide scope if you wanted to, or you could narrow in on a particular thing, which is probably the best thing to do. So the use of generative AI, you could write a 1,500 word paper on that. You could also write a PhD thesis on that. The trick will be zeroing in on like something very specific and precise that makes it fundamentally immoral, and trying to convince the reader of that. So I would try and limit your domain. Like you're talking about generative AI, but limit it to AI artwork or AI writing or something like that. Limit it to a particular domain within the whole generative AI sphere. Make your argument, and then in your conclusion, you can say, my concerns about this area of generative AI also arguably apply to other applications, but that is beyond the scope of this paper. But then, of course, down the road, you might write a longer paper on this topic. Papers like this, if any of you are thinking of doing an honors thesis or maybe one day a master's thesis, right? Papers like this are a great opportunity to start sprouting those seeds, right? So maybe you have an idea about something, in this paper, and it's like a little seedling. And then you have all these little seedlings that you've been working on throughout your undergrad. And then when you go to grad school, you can take one of those seedlings and make it grow into a bigger plant, right? So if you have something that's wide in scope, but you don't have the space, that's okay. You can still work on it. It's not like you can't keep working on something similar, something to do with the same sorts of the same topic down the road, right? Right. I do have to get ready for the next one. I'm doing this all over again for moral psychology in a couple of minutes. I need to refresh my coffee here. So I hope that you found this informative. As mentioned, this will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. So you can watch it later if you've missed something here, go back, watch it again. Put it on like, twice as fast and just listen and it'll refresh everything. And reach out with any questions if you have any questions. And I hope you all have a good reading week. I hope you all are able to get home safely. It looks like the snow is over. Well, it's still on the ground and they're clearing it, but I hope your travel plans are safe if you're leaving town to go home. So stay safe, take care, everyone, and I'll see you the week after reading week. All right, bye for now.